Hey there!
How's it poppin'? It's time to score Arc 11 for Guide to Skell Superweapons. Superweapons are all crafted from the AM terminal and unlock via obtaining the blueprints from various missions and treasure boxes around the world. Coming in level 30, 50, and 60 variants, but only the level 60 variants are worth crafting. Superweapons all have a 2-minute long cooldown, 3 traits, and most but not all have exceptionally high weapon attack stats. They all use either both back slots, both shoulder slots, or in a few cases all 4. I won't be going over all the details of how to build around each one, but generally every superweapon wants 3 weapon attack augments to maximize their ridiculously high attack stats. I'm going to be going over each superweapon and give it a rating on how well they can be built to one-shot enemies in glass cannon builds, and how well they can work in more sustained combat builds. These will be factoring in how much damage they do, what weapons can be used to support it for damage or proc and cockpit time, and how fast they are. One more piece of general info to understand the value of each weapon is that the game doesn't tell you this, but Skell arts have hit scaling the same as ground arts do. This plays into how some weapons may be better or worse than they look from their stat screens. The way the damage formula works is that your attack stat is multiplied by hit scaling percentage for each hit, then adds in weapon attack before applying damage boosts. So I'll be showing what the hidden hit scaling is for all of them. We'll start off with the best of them all, the Giga Drill Break, also known as Goliath Piledriver. The Piledriver is a physical melee weapon with 9 hits and 1500% hit scaling, meaning that each hit from this weapon is 15 times your melee attack plus 9600 before damage boosts get applied. It also has a hidden effect of inflicting stagger on all but the largest of enemies, though anything that would take stagger is probably already dead anyway. It increases damage from behind with a 100% additive, and each hit can apply physical resistance down for all hits afterwards to do 1.5. It comes with one notably good trait which further increases back damage. With enough investment and spiral power, you can OHKO anything short of Gradivis with this. For sustained combat builds, it's a bit slow and you do need to reposition for the bonus, but since you want to run this with the Excavator Gravity Armor, it pairs well with a G or G2 Buster for something else strong to use during the wait for cockpit time. The Electromagnetic Zenith Cannon. Single hit physical ranged weapon with 2000% scaling and a hidden effect of launch on small to large enemies with knockback on extra large. Being single hit, raising ranged attack isn't as impactful as stacking more damage boosts. It ignores resistances like Blossom Dance does, making it the next best thing for OHKOing with. Unfortunately, it hits a hard limit of not being possible to OHKO the very strongest enemies like Telethia, due to them having HP above the Skell damage cap. But that isn't too big of a deal when the second hit will usually finish the job with quick cooldown. For sustain, it's pretty average but still high enough rating just for doing absolutely massive chunk damage, and the traits on it are slightly helpful for longer fights. The Deus Crusher. 7-hit physical melee with 1500% scaling, and a hidden stagger except for the largest enemies. Very good trait of physical attack up, the other traits are pretty worthless though. Like the Piledriver, it inflicts resistance down to increase its own damage after the first hit, and gets a 200% damage bonus against Ultra Fauna. Effectively, it has 2 extra Ultra Fauna Slayer augments equipped to it. It's good in general, but particularly good against Telethia, Farsis, and Apocalypsis. The only downside for sustained combat is the lack of strong shoulder weapons to pair it with since it takes both shoulder slots, and physical lacks other weapons to take advantage of resistance down in general. The Drone Storm, a large area of effect physical weapon that hits 12 times for 500% hit scaling, flinches mid-sized enemies, and launches smaller ones. 2 good traits, attribute damage, and normally only available as a frame augment, Overdrive Extend, which can be very nice for sustained combat, and it inflicts resistance down, so why such low ratings? The lower attack power seems like it would be made up for by the hit count and resistance down like Piledriver and Deus, but it only has an effective 6000% scaling versus theirs, which are nearly and more than double that. But in reality, it's actually more like 3000% because it's one of only 2 Skell weapons in the game to scale off of half of both ranged attack and melee attack stats added together. So it scales horribly compared to anything else, and they give you absolutely no indication of this within the game itself. Antimatter Round. Long-range, single-hit gravity with decent area of effect, 2000% scaling, and it looks ridiculously cool. Hidden launch effect on small to large enemies, knockback on extra large. Gravity damage trait is great, especially since there isn't many support weapons to provide it. Night accuracy isn't bad, but usually isn't necessary. This is sort of a side grade to the Zenith Cannon. It has an easier time OHKOing some things due to gravity weakness being common, but against the Ultra Fauna it's strictly worse, and those are the toughest things you'll be fighting with it. But with gravity resistance down, if you don't OHKO something, it's got better repeated hits. It can still pair with G-Buster and or drones, so one of the better super weapons in longer fights. The Zweihand Quarterer. Rocket-propelled melee gravity swords that hit 3 times for 1500% scaling and inflict stagger. For traits, it gets physical damage. Why? But it also gets Arts GP, which is fantastic for sustained combat builds. It inflicts gravity resistance down, and since it's a multi-hit, gets to take advantage of that right away, as well as a 150% additive when targeted. This is easily the best and most spammable super weapon for longer fights due to its very fast animation for a super weapon and targeted bonus. Pair this with a G-Buster to follow up and other fast weapons for cockpit time. The Dragoon Lance. This thing is just launching an epic massive orbital strike, ranged beam attack that fires 1 shot, but that shot has 3 hits. Each hit can apply beam resistance down, but its 1500% ratio is split across them to actually be a 500% ratio per hit. Has 2 top tier traits with another that's pretty good. But this thing isn't likely to OHKO much, and is absolutely worthless in longer fights because it takes up both shoulder and back slots, severely limiting support weapons to boost its damage, proc cockpit time, or really do any damage at all outside of this one attack. Hexad Partican. Single hit beam ranged, 1500% scaling, beam resistance down, and 130% additive if you've raised morale level with a perfect QTE before using it so you can't get the bonus while using draw opening damage that comes with it. Takes up both shoulder and back slots like the Dragoon Lance. It super sucks. The Barrage Cloak. A ranged beam attack with an area of effect equal to Phoenix that sprays beams everywhere while granting invincibility during its animation. 8 hits for 500% scaling, which isn't huge, but beam does get some of the best attribute damage support weapons like R cannons, and it inflicts resistance down. So it's comparable to the Zenith Cannon, being double the scaling but fairly less weapon attack. A stronger element against half the super bosses, and multi-hit to kill with a single use instead of 2. Reflect damage trait is on the niche side but still very nice, and overdrive frame HP is great for sustained builds. The worst thing about it is just competing for shoulder slots with drones. Gonna go over the electric super weapons together quickly because they're all bad. Electric really lacks any good supporting weapons too. Trident Anchor. 2000% scaling, single ranged hit that inflicts shock. The add for it in-game is a lie. It doesn't have homing or physical bonuses. The only value in this thing is adding to a reflect build for its traits. Electric Flood. 500% single ranged hit that inflicts some debuffs, moderately good traits, and has a 200% damage bonus in the rain. There's far better debuff scale weapons without painfully long cooldowns, and the rain bonus is laughably niche. Voltaic Tusk. Ranged area of effect, 1000% scaling on 6 hits, 1 good damage trait, and a 150% rain bonus. Still bad, but at least it's trying. If you really want an electric build, just use the Night Cage. It's better than any of these. The Detonation Flail. When you just want a stupidly big hammer with a stupidly big explosion. Thermal melee with a 2000% single hit and inflicts Blaze 5, which does 28% of the initial hit damage every 3 seconds. This percent is reduced by resistances, but raising the buff tier and using Conduction Rise can increase it. Shock from the Trident Anchor is similar, but this weapon is so much stronger that if you want a damage over time strategy, just use this instead. One noteworthy trait with attribute damage. The final super weapon to go over is another giant rifle, the Megaflame Bullet. Thermal ranged with 3 hits for 2000% scaling and inflicts thermal resistance down. Hidden effect of launch on small to large enemies, stagger on extra large, and no effect on the largest. One good trait with attribute damage, giving it strong usage for both OHKO builds and longer fights. Both it and the Detonation Flail benefit heavily from comboing with disc bombs and grenades for sustained combat builds. So that's an overview of what every Skell super weapon does and how easy it is to build around. Of course, even the bad ones can still be useful if you want to build around them. You're just going to have a better time using other non-super weapon Skell weapons instead. Tell me in the comments what your favorite super weapon is, and soon I'll be doing guides on the best Skell weapons of each attribute and where to farm them. If you want guides on other things like movement techniques, probe layouts, or mechanical explanations, click on the playlist to your left, and see you next time.
Didn't see that coming. Gun him down.